Hello dear all. So in this lecture we discuss 10 chapter from Richard Hughes philosophy. Administration of similar remedy concluded. Remedy must be administered singly, rarely, constitutionally and minutely. So the first point Dr. Henneman is telling us the importance of single remedy as against polypharmacy. So the first important point in today's discussion is the Dr. Henneman is advising us to use single remedy as against the practice of polypharmacy which prevailed at his times. Dr. Henneman very early came to entertain a strong aversion to polypharmacy. In the essay in 1797, he said, are the obstacles to simplicity and certainty in practical medicine insurmountable? So he was dissatisfied with the use of mixtures and large doses. He started advocating the use of single remedy. Dare I confess that for many years I had never prescribed anything but singly medicine at once and have never repeated a dose until the former one is ceased. So he very clearly tells that he has used the medicines as a single medicine at a time and has never repeated a dose until the former one is ceased. So he has repeated only after the effect of the previous dose is over. So single remedy, not polypharmacy, is his motto. What about the chemical compounds? He tells us to consider these as one simple remedy. In contrast to all this, homeopathy has, like its founder, dared to confess that the single remedy has always been the rule in its hand. When we say single, it must of course be understood that we do not exclude the use of chemical compounds like the salts or of vegetable products as opium with analysis may found of a complex constitution. So we can use these chemical compounds as one simple remedy. These chemical compounds must have been proved previously on healthy provers as separate elements or as a one remedy. If we know their physiological effect of simples, then as simples that can be employed. That means if the compound is proved as a one simple remedy, then it can be used and employed as a one remedy. We may even though cautiously go further and administer the compounds where we are only acquainted with action on the healthy of their separate elements. So if the chemical compound is not proved as one simple remedy and if we are having the action of the two separate elements of this compound, then we can use it cautiously. In this way, we have made good use of iodide and arsenate of calcium, of phosphide of zinc, and picrate of iron. So, Dr. Henneman has used such compounds and he is giving the references of these. Dr. Henneman rejects polypharmacy. The master own expressed the approval. I am far from saying that mixture would be ineffective, but their use would be fatal to the simplicity of the homeopathic method and would embark us once more on the confused and unscientific polypharmacy from which we have to happily escape. So, he strongly denying the use of polypharmacy and mixtures in large doses that can be fatal, and as against he advocates the simplicity of homeopathic method, that is using the one single homeopathic remedy and giving the rare repetitions. In last edition he disallows it on another ground and mentioned in aphorism 169 170. So can this point can be considered as second prescription, that if we had no knowledge of disease but what which consists in the survey of the symptoms of each case as it occurs, there could be no doubt of this being the ideal homeopathy. Hahnemann admits that the second remedy may prove to be that which at first seemed almost equally indicated. Why should not the skilled physician be able to recognize the cases where it will be so and prescribe it at once accordingly? So, if physician has come across the second remedy and it is very near to the totality, then if he has been able to find this, that he can prescribe it as a next remedy. That we are having the labeled as cyclical remedies. Hahnemann, who had a full sense of their existence, was practically an alternator, or at any rate on a prior prescriber of successions in many of them. So here Dr. Richard Hughes in this chapter gives us the various references in homeopathic practice of Dr. Hahnemann. Thus, in a group, that is whooping cough type, he tells us always precede spongia by aconite, and that means first give aconite followed by spongia and then by heparin sulph, a practice which one of his most disciples, Dr. Bonninghausen, created into a system giving to all cases 5 powders. So again a reference is given how Dr. Bonninghausen has used by prescribing some 5 powders. But here the example is that Dr. Hahnemann has advocated use of aconite followed by spongia followed by heparin sulph. Alternating medicines are used by Dr. Hahnemann. In Purpura miliaris, he devised the alternation of aconite and coffea, giving indeed the indication for each, but saying that one or other should be given according to these 12, 16 or 24 hours. So Dr. Hahnemann had used such alternation of aconite and coffea in the treatment of Purpura miliaris. For cholera, he has been writing that the best homeopathic practitioner have found cuprum indispensable disease alternated if the symptom indicates this with veratrum alb. So in cholera, which is very difficult disease at Hahnemann's time, that use of cuprum mate can be alternated with veratrum alb. No less plainly does he say of the post-choleric fever. In this, bryonia alternately with rustox proves the eminent service. In urgent cases, again, alternating medicines can be used. Richard Hughes says that in definite diseases, the presence of urgent complication is better made by alteration than by change of remedy. So, in such cases, the urgent complications are there, then they can be treated more effectively by alteration of remedies. Mercor should be continued throughout the dysentery. and aconite as long as the fever of measles lasts through colic tenesmus. Cough or ophthalmia should require other medicines concomitantly. Beyond this, I have not myself gone at present, and a single remedy is entirely the rule in key practice. So, here some references are given how Dr. Hahnemann has done the use of alteration of medicines in his homeopathic practice. But he clearly, strongly tells us that beyond this I have not myself gone at present, and a single remedy is entirely the rule in as a key in the practice. So remedy is used rarely. Second point. The second rule for administration of the similar remedy is that it should be given rarely. That means minimum repetitions. You will remember that Hahnemann speaking in 1796 of the monopharmacy of his practice for some time then passed, he adds, and I have never repeated the dose until the action of the former one had ceased. So he is very clearly stating that he will not repeat the second dose until and unless the dose of the previous dose of the medicine is over. The single dose as well as the single medicine continued to be his ideal for many years thereafter. Very important point. The single dose as well as the single medicine continued to be his ideal for many years thereafter. So he has used alternating medicines, but very clearly he gives the conclusion that what is ideal is use of single medicine and single dose. Repetition is done only when giving practical instructions, as in the Medicine of Experience book written by Dr. Hahnemann in 1805, and in Organon he says it down that a second dose should only be given when the action of the first is exhausted. So very clearly stating that if the action of the previous dose is continuous, do not repeat. We know that there it makes a great difference how we proceed, whether giving single full dose or, which is the same thing, a single full successions of smaller doses till some effect is produced. So there are two methods, either to give a single full dose or to give the single full successions of the smaller doses. Now we watch the result until their complete subsidence, or whether we keep the subject of experiment under the continual influence of the drug by dose repeated at regular interval for some space of time. So there is a difference that giving one single dose and wait, and the second method to give smaller doses in repetitions. So the two methods are different. Third point Dr. Hahnemann considers while prescribing similar remedy is give a constitutional remedy. The similar remedy is to be administered singly, rarely. It is also to be given constitutionally. It is chosen from the correspondence of the totality of symptoms with those of the patient, that it may embrace his whole malady. It must therefore therapeutically as pathogenetically to be taken into the system. Its mode of importance is comparatively unimportant. So it must be therapeutically and pathogenetically should be taken into the system. Routes of administration. So what Dr. Hahnemann's instructions for this? This may be the olfaction if Hahnemann practiced at one time or the hypodermic injection advocated for the occasional use by Kafka. So, Dr. Richard Hughes is giving us various references even after Dr. Hahnemann what the practitioners of homeopathy has done. It may consist in absorption from the cutaneous surface or through the rectal mucous membrane. Ingestion through the mouth into the stomach is ordinarily more convenient and form our usual method. Are local applications never desirable in homeopathic practice? So again there is a discussion done by Dr. Richard Hughes that whether to give the remedy internally as well as externally. That means whether the remedy is given which is internally can be given as a local application. So what is the reference? At the British Homeopathic Congress in 1878, Dr. Dyce Brown read a paper on the use of external application in homeopathic practice. So here various references are given what different homeopathic doctors have done in their homeopathic practice and what results they have got. It grew out of recommendation of his students of London School of Homeopathy that in obstinate cases of follicular pharyngitis they should swab the throat with a solution of nitrate of silver. Homeopathic monthly review has been criticized by the stricter practitioner. Among us, he did not succeed in his arming their oppositions. So, some doctors were advocating the use of local applications. But Dr. Hahnemann has strongly discouraged the local application. The reasons are also been given by Dr. Hahnemann. Now when we have to inquire as to the conformity of any therapeutic procedure to the method of Dr. Hahnemann, it is obvious that Hahnemann's own doctrine and practice on the subject is ascertainable and must have great weight in our determination. So we have to inquire what is the conformity of this therapeutic procedure, what Dr. Hahnemann has advised us, and what is the certain method. Dr. Brown makes too much of the master's opposition to local application when he says that he strongly discouraged or rather forbade the use of any external application whatever. So Dr. Brown is not giving any local application. So the reason is Dr. Hahnemann is forbidding the use of local application or use of internal medicine also externally is because the local application removes the symptoms which remains absent while constructing the totality of symptoms. The conclusion seems to be that Hahnemann's only objection to local application arose from their failing in most cases to cover the totality of symptoms when the affection was local from the first or had become secondarily. He was entirely in favor of the topical use of the indicated remedy, and this in doses far more substantial than those he recommended for internal administration. So, in Dr. Hahnemann has given this instruction that the topical use of the indicated remedy can be done, but afterwards he is strongly opposing the topical use of the internal medicine. So it is confirmed that Dr. Hahnemann ultimately tells us that local application is prohibited. I think that we need hardly go further in our inquiry that local application under certain circumstances or homeopathy upon Hahnemann. The only question that remains is how far do the local application in ordinary use among homeopathic practitioners conforms to Hahnemann's canons. So Hahnemann's writings are, you have to confirm what is the correct instruction given by Dr. Hahnemann in his writings, that the local application should be done or should not be done. As affection, local from the first is which we employ them a good many may be ranked as are bruises and strains and burns already mentioned, to which we may add as of a lie character wounds and stings. So it is given in an artistic words that giving the medicine internally as well as externally will add to our problems. Means bruises and strains are already there, and it will add as like the pains of stinging pains. That means what? The problem is there of the patient suffering, and when we are giving this treatment internally as well as externally, it will add up the problem. So suppose the wound is of bruises and strains and burns, it would again get worse because of this local application, and the patient may have the stinging pains. So this phrase is used to correlate that if the medicine is given internally as well as externally, it will add up the problems. Example, there are then several forms of conjunctivitis and especially the various kind of purulent ophthalmia, all of which seems to be due to actual contact of virulent matter with the eye. Malignant pustule is often caused by inoculation at the spot affected and involves the constitutional secondary. So if there is an inoculation and the pustule may appear at that spot because of secondary infection. Stomatitis, esophagitis, and gastritis set up by irritant poisoning belong to the same category, and several affections of the skin due to external irritants. Whatever we can do in all these instances by the local application of medicines, homeopathic of them we are doing according to the method of Hahnemann. So even though it is said once in the organoid that the local application is can be allowed internally and externally only in the treatment of warts, and local application is allowed of the thuja. Otherwise, Dr. Hahnemann is not advocating any local application. So we are thus led to the question whether even in local affection having a constitutional root we do not act wisely in bringing our remedy to bear directly upon them where practicable, while covering the totality of symptoms, giving them internally at the same time externally. So there is a question again whether to give internally and externally. So finally we will conclude what is the answer. Dr. Dudgeon quotes several homeopathic authorities is in the favor of limited use of this method. Gross, who is found recommending lachesis, silicia, rustox as external applicants for ulcer of the leg. This practice has not been advocated and carried out on a very extensive scale by Dr. Himmelrath. In the communication to which I have referred, he has told us how he has brought it to bear wherever available, using always the same remedy locally, which upon homeopathic principle was being given internally. He began with affection of the eyes and was astonished at the result which he obtained. He then went on to the affection of the other part as the ears, the mouth and the anogenital region, and had the same markedly increased success as compared with that which he had previously gained from the internal treatment alone. He commonly employed the remedies locally in the first titration or a dilution, adding lard or water as required. So, this is the experience of this doctor. Now, the conclusion final is Dr. Hahnemann prohibits the use of internal and external use of remedy as it removes the symptom from forming the totality, and also the pointer for selection of remedy is lost. So finally we have to keep it in mind this point, that he prohibits the use of internal and external use of remedy as it removes the symptoms from forming the totality, and also the pointer for the selection of remedy is lost. So that was all about the discussion of this 10th chapter from the Richard Hughes philosophy. Thank you.